Hey, Caitlin! Can you make it from there?
Nike didn't just drop a commercial. They quietly revealed the future. Millions of dollars spent, global celebrities involved, a perfectly timed release, and a message so understated that most fans completely missed what was actually being communicated. This wasn't about jokes. It wasn't really about range. And it definitely wasn't just marketing. It was a roadmap.
And pour more concrete so I could have an entire three-point line in my driveway.
Did that really happen? You extended your range by dumping more concrete.
Yeah.
Because what Nike just did with Caitlin Clark tells us exactly what comes next and why 2026 is going to be a turning point for women's basketball. You've seen the commercial by now. Familiar faces, big personalities, a tone that feels casual, even playful.
Because it was like kind of slanted. Our driveway was like slanted, so I only had a three-point line on one side of the driveway. So I told my dad he had to tear up all this grass, and he did.
There's disbelief, light teasing, that knowing smile people use when they think they're watching something impressive but unsustainable. The doubt feels harmless, friendly, almost affectionate.
I was taught from a very young age to just block out the noise and always dream big and believe that I can do anything I want to do.
Then Caitlin steps into frame. No arguing, no explaining, no theatrics. Just the ball, the shot, and the result.
My name's Caitlin Clark, and I'm a point guard. What's amazing about women's basketball is that we bring it all to the court. We bring that emotion, we bring that fire. That's how I've always played the game, and I think that's what makes it so fun.
The disbelief evaporates not through confrontation, but through inevitability. Nike titled the campaign From Anywhere. Most people took that at face value. Deep threes, logo shots, range highlights, the visual shorthand we already associate with Clark. But that wasn't the point. Nike wasn't selling distance, they were selling inevitability. The idea that doubt isn't something she overcomes, it's something she converts. Nike understands something most brands miss. Truly transformative athletes don't just win games or rack up stats. They rewrite expectations. Caitlin Clark doesn't make shots despite doubt. She makes them because of it. That's why the commercial doesn't glorify her first. It questions her first. Nike didn't invent that narrative. They documented it. Because that tone, that subtle skepticism wrapped in curiosity, is something Clark has heard her entire life. Long before NIL deals, sell-out arenas, or record-breaking television ratings, there was a driveway in Iowa, not a pristine training facility, not a private gym with rebounders and shooting machines, just concrete, exposed to the elements. Winters so cold the ball felt heavier in your hands, summers where the surface warped and cracked, a slight slope that meant every bounce, every release, behaved a little differently than it should have. Shooting there wasn't comfortable, it wasn't optimized, it was harder than it needed to be. Most kids would have adjusted. They would have stepped in a little closer, tweaked their mechanics to compensate for the slope, shortened their range and told themselves they'd extend it later, when conditions were better. They would have adapted to the limitation and learned to live inside it. Caitlin didn't do that. She asked her dad to tear up the grass, not to make the driveway look nicer, not for convenience, not because it was uncomfortable. She wanted more space. She wanted a real three-point line. She wanted distance, not accommodation. That detail matters far more than it seems because it reveals something foundational about how she thinks. When confronted with a constraint, she doesn't ask how to work around it. She asks how to eliminate it entirely. That mindset followed her as she moved up levels. The settings changed. The competition got better. The scrutiny intensified. But the message stayed remarkably consistent. Too small, too slow. That style won't work here. High school coaches warned that college defenses would expose her. College analysts insisted professional athletes would swallow her range. WNBA voices predicted her shooting would fade against elite speed, length, and physicality. It was the same critique, recycled at every stage, dressed up in new language but rooted in the same assumption, that what she was doing was unsustainable, that eventually reality would force her to compromise. It never did. She didn't trim her game to meet expectations. She expanded it until the expectations themselves collapsed. Each level didn't constrain her range, it extended it. Each new challenge didn't force restraint. It demanded more ambition. What started as audacity slowly became inevitability. Eventually, something shifted. This stopped being the story of a shooter taking bold risks and became something far more uncomfortable for defenses to deal with. Efficiency replaced novelty. Consistency replaced spectacle. Control replaced chaos. She wasn't hitting deep shots once or twice a game to spark crowds or end up on highlight reels. She was doing it relentlessly, possession after possession, night after night. Defenders couldn't sit back and drop coverage without getting punished. They couldn't trap high without giving up numbers elsewhere. They couldn't press without conceding space that she was perfectly equipped to exploit. The geometry of the floor changed when she crossed half court. Coaches stopped game planning against her team as a collective. They started game planning around her gravity, where she stood, how quickly she processed, how far out she had to be guarded. That's when the sport itself began to bend. Not dramatically, not all at once, but unmistakably. Spacing stretched, schemes warped, assumptions cracked. What once seemed unreasonable became routine. What once looked like excess became necessity. And once that happens, once the game starts adjusting to you instead of the other way around, there's no going back. Nike didn't look at Caitlin Clark and see shooting mechanics. They saw leverage. They saw someone who forces defenses to guard space differently. Someone who compels coaches to rethink coverage. Someone who pulls fans into broadcasts early and keeps them there late. That's not talent. That's transformation. And transformation sells better than highlights ever could. The celebrities in the commercial weren't random. They represented doubt wearing a smile, the same kind Clark has faced for years. Not angry, not hostile, just dismissive. The kind of doubt that assumes limitations without malice. Nike knew fans would recognize it instantly because everyone has doubted Caitlin Clark at some point, and everyone has been proven wrong. Then came her rookie season, and the volume increased. Veterans questioned the hype. Media voices predicted regression. Fans waited for reality to arrive and correct the narrative. Instead, reality bent. Ratings spiked when she played and dipped when she didn't. Cities felt it. Merchandise reflected it. Sponsors noticed. The economic impact estimates reached roughly $36 million, nearly 27% of the league's total economic impact, even with missed time. That wasn't popularity, that was structural influence. And for the first time, the WNBA had proof. Not projections, not optimism, not belief. Evidence that a single player could materially alter the business. Once that truth exists, it can't be ignored. It forces decisions. It forces strategy. It forces alignment. Then came the quiet bombshell. Caitlin Clark's signature Nike shoe, slated for spring 2026. Not leaked, not rushed, not accidental. Nike slowed the rollout deliberately, because this wasn't about speed. It was about scale. By 2026, everything aligns. Clark fully healthy, league momentum accelerating, global interest already established, a narrative mature enough to support a franchise product. Nike's CEO Elliott Hill made it clear this is being built with Clark, not merely for her. Design, story, timing. Nothing launches until it's right. That patience tells you everything about how big this really is. Most signature shoes follow a familiar script. Flashy hype, individual branding, short-term buzz. Caitlin rejected that model. This shoe isn't about exclusivity. It's about access. Youth programs, grassroots basketball, global outreach, international expansion. China was mentioned for a reason. Clark has been consistent on this point. Visibility isn't the goal. Opportunity is. This shoe isn't meant to sit on shelves. It's meant to sit on courts. In gyms that never had this kind of inspiration before. In places where kids were told their range was unrealistic, their ambition impractical, their dreams misplaced. That philosophy changes everything. You can see it in how she operates now, long after the novelty has worn off and the attention has become constant. She elevates teammates in ways that don't always show up in box scores but are obvious if you're watching closely. She redirects attention when it would be easy to absorb it. She widens the spotlight instead of standing in it alone. Aaliyah Boston gets cleaner touches. Kelsey Mitchell gets more space to attack. Lexi Hull finds herself in rhythm, confident, engaged. Caitlin Clark doesn't dominate the narrative, she multiplies it, and that isn't accidental. It's leadership by design. There's a patience to it, an understanding that influence compounds when it's shared. She knows that making others better isn't charity, it's leverage. The more dangerous her teammates become, the harder it is to reduce her impact to a single coverage or a single storyline. The game becomes bigger than her, even as it continues to revolve around her gravity. That's the kind of leadership that lasts, because it doesn't rely on volume or control. It relies on trust. That same philosophy carries over to how she talks about her future off the court. Experts believe her signature shoe could generate 9-figure revenue, potentially becoming a top 5 signature basketball franchise across the entire sport, men's or women's. That kind of projection usually invites talk of contracts, market share, and personal brand valuation. Clark rarely goes there. Instead, she talks about reach, about access, about what scale allows you to build when the platform is big enough, because she understands something most people miss. Revenue isn't the end goal. It's the infrastructure. The bigger the business becomes, the more resources exist to support youth programs, grassroots courts, visibility in markets that have never had it, and pathways for players who might never have been seen otherwise. Money, in her framing, isn't validation. It's fuel. That's what Nike understood when they built the From Anywhere campaign the way they did. It was never just about distance or range. It was about origin. It was about telling kids that where you start doesn't dictate where you finish. That driveway in Iowa wasn't special because of its location or its storybook quality. It was special because of belief, because it was a place where limitations weren't accepted as permanent. Caitlin Clark didn't just succeed inside that belief system, she mapped it. Doubt became distance. Distance became confidence. Confidence became influence. Influence became opportunity. And opportunity, when handled correctly, becomes something that outlives the individual who created it. That blueprint doesn't end with her. It scales. It's repeatable. It invites others in rather than locking them out. That's why it matters so much beyond highlights or endorsements, which is why 2026 isn't just a product launch or a comeback season. It's a line in the sand, a moment where women's basketball steps fully into global branding territory that once belonged almost exclusively to men's sports. Not as an experiment, not as a novelty, but as a legitimate, scalable business with cultural weight. Caitlin Clark is the bridge between those worlds, not because she demanded that role and not because she was handed it, but because she made it unavoidable through consistency, credibility, and an understanding of how influence actually works. That kid shooting alone in the cold didn't just build range, she built a future. And the only real question left isn't whether Nike is right to bet on her. It's whether the rest of the sport is ready for what that bet unlocks.